Hi, everyone, and thank you all for being with us this evening. I'm Alex Giannini from the Westport Library, and I am so excited to get right into tonight's discussion with May Cobb. But first, if you have questions for May, please type them in the Q&A box right below us, and I'll do my best to get to them a little bit later tonight. And with that, May Cobb grew up in the piney woods of East Texas, where both of their thrillers, the new one, The Hunting Wives, and one of my favorite books of 2018, Big Woods, are set. After college, May moved to San Francisco and studied Victorian literature for her master's and gravitated towards that era's detective novels known as sensation novels, such as the awesome Wilkie Collins's The Woman in White. May currently lives in Austin, Texas with her husband and son, and her writing has appeared in the Washington Post, The Rumpus, Austin Monthly, and Edible Austin. So, everybody, please join me in welcoming May Cobb. Hi, May.
Hey, Alex, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, please, thank you for being here. I'm so excited for this. I'll start by saying that I am obviously a big fan of yours. I came across Big Woods as a an Amazon suggested read in 2018, and it turned into my favorite book of that year. And I think with Hunting Wives, you have written a much different book, but just a killer book, and I love it. It's so fast moving. I can't wait to talk to you about it. But can we start on, because I find this super fascinating, can we start to talk about your writer's journey and your path to publication with Big Woods?
Absolutely. So I wrote Big Woods in 2016, and I sent it out to a bunch of agents, and I got a couple of different offers from agents. And anyway, I signed with an agent, and after I think it was about 4 months of being on submission, so a pretty long time, we heard that Midnight Ink, which is an indie press, made an offer, and I was super excited. And you know, um, it had gone to like some editorial boards at Big Five publishers, but at the very last, someone voted it down for whatever reason. It's so subjective and crazy. And but I was so happy it had found a home. And the editor there, I have to give her a shout out. Terry Bischoff was so nurturing and warm with her authors, and she had such an incredible reputation that I signed immediately and jumped all over it. And I loved working with them. They were an indie press. They're now defunct and bankrupt. So that's the book's out of print at the moment. But anyway, so that was sort of my start with the novel. And it was, it was a great, it got some really great reviews and some great blurbs from other authors. And then it was time. I don't know if you want me to jump into talking about The Hunting Wives
Sure,
next, but
sure.
after it launched, I realized pretty quickly that I was really trying in earnest to make writing my full time job if I could,
Mhm.
because I have a special needs son. It's kind of hard to work outside the house, and I really wanted to make it work with an indie press. There's not a lot of money there, so I was really panicked, and I was at a crossroads. Like, do I really keep doing this? And so I was, looking for full time work, and I couldn't even get calls back. Like, I live in Austin, and everyone wants someone much younger than me. I think, I don't know. Um, but I very quickly wrote The Hunting Wives. Over about 3 or 4 months, I wrote a partial, and I sent it out to agents, and I just I got a couple of offers, and my agents and I really connected, and she said, I will sell this on a partial for you. You need income, it's clear. And it was clear. um, and so anyway, that's the story of that. She basically sent it out, and within a week we were in auction situation, which was
Wow,
crazy.
wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mentioned to you before, and I kind of alluded to it, but for me at least, Big Woods came out of nowhere, and I'm pretty up to date on publishing trends and things like that. And when I saw the recommendation on my phone, I was like, wow, this book really sounds like a thing that I'd like. And I've told you, like, it's ready made in my opinion for a Netflix series. I mean, it's set at the right time, and it's just like it should just be bought. But again, the it's hard for a book to sneak past me just because of what I do for a living. I mean, that's my job, is to not let books sneak by me, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm wondering the difference on the launch day for Big Woods and then launch day for Hunting Wives, because up here, and I told you this before, but I started texting or emailing you some photos of the book being face out at Barnes and Noble and other bookstores up here and in Connecticut. And then it just got creepy because literally I could have sent you 20 photos of this. It's everywhere. So could you talk about launch day and the differences between the two books?
Well, first, thank you, Alex, for all your kind words about Big Woods and the Hunting
Hmm.
Wives, and also for sending me those pictures because, we're all still, we're not in lockdown, but it's
Hmm.
not like I'm traveling a lot. So, other than seeing it locally, it's so nice to see those. The launch day for the books, it literally night and day. With an indie press, I had a great publicist working that I worked with, and she did phenomenal stuff and got the book starred reviews and
Hmm.
some coverage. But it just they don't have the indie presses, of course, don't have the bandwidth or you know the power behind them to really move books in this very crazy competitive market and or the distribution channels. Like Big
Right.
Woods did not get picked up by Barnes and Nobles, for instance, so it was almost exclusively in indie stores and on Amazon. So for the Hunting Wives to have such a wide distribution, in every Barnes and Noble and with such great placement, I mean, I could cry thinking about
Hmm.
how overwhelmingly grateful I am for that. And Berkeley, my publisher, which is an imprint of Penguin Random House, has just been astonishingly supportive and very much pushing this book. They got so much great coverage for it. I mean, it was like a Good Housekeeping pick, Cosmo, and then it was really great because I found out during the nasty Texas winter storm, the snow apocalypse, as I was melting snow to be able to flush our commodes, so we had no running water. That it was going to be a book of the month club pick for April, and that was huge for me. That's always been a dream of mine, and to have that come true, and to get the news at such a crazy time during a climate crisis. Anyway, I won't go into climate
No,
change
yeah.
during this, but yeah, it's just been. I mean, I can't believe it. It already has like 2,000 reviews on Goodreads and 600 reviews on Amazon. And I remember when I celebrated my 100th review on Amazon, and a lot of that was me on social media, like, I'll buy you a beer if you please leave me a review. And I got a lot of those reviews myself. So just to have them,
Hmm.
it's the machine of the publisher really is responsible for that. You write the best book you can and you hope it finds its readers, but it really is up to the publisher to push it.
Hmm. Well, and so I want to dive in a little bit further to Hunting Wives. Maybe let's start with, can you tell the audience? I don't want to do spoilers, so
Sure.
I'll avoid spoilers. But if you want to give folks kind of an idea of what the book is about.
Absolutely. So the book follows Sophie O'Neill, who's a young wife and mother, and she moves from Chicago and she leaves behind like this sort of glossy magazine, like lifestyle magazine editorial job. And she moves to this small town in East Texas with her husband, her dashing husband, who is like perfect, and her sweet toddler, because she wants to sort of give her son a different life than she had. She wants to raise him in a more slowed down way. And she kind of wants to be like an Instagram lifestyle blogger, work from home, have picnics in the field with her kid, make her own lemonade, that sort of thing. And it all seems like roses until she realizes she's bored out of her skull. Like the town is too small, the walls are closing in. She thought the grass would be greener, but it's like boringly green. And so she's restless and bored, which is a recipe for disaster. And then she meets this alluring socialite named Margot Banks, who's like sexy and enigmatic and also crazy wealthy with East Texas oil money. And she's part of a secret clique known as the Hunting Wives. And the Hunting Wives are just basically a group of misbehaving wealthy women who go out on the weekends and shoot skeet and drink way too much and do other unsavory things to blow off steam. And she gets totally swept up in their world. And then there's she gets also swept up into a murder investigation.
I think you do so many interesting things with existing tropes and just kind of turning the Mean Girls trope on its head, and then the oh, I'm bored with my life, but Sophie has so many layers, and hopefully we can get into that. But from what I understand, the idea for the book came from a car ride with your mom.
Yes, exactly. I was home back visiting my mom, who still lives in East Texas, and we were driving the backcountry roads, which is something we just love to do together. And she started telling me about when she was in high school in the mid 60s there in East Texas. And there was something called the hunting party. And it was basically the rich, popular guys. And they would go out on the weekends and sit on the hoods of their cars and like shoot at like rabbits and stuff and drink beer and sometimes invite people along. And she was invited once, and when she was telling me the story, I was like, god, that could have gone wrong like 10,000 different ways. And I thought, what a great setup for a novel. And I thought, at first I thought, ooh, I'd love to set it in the 60s. Then I was like, I don't want to do the research, like I want to make it modern. And then very quickly I decided to make it an all-female shooting club because I wanted to sort of twist around the stereotype of, men getting to go out and hunt and having their boys weekend and getting up to no good. And I wanted women to have this space where they could behave as badly and as atrociously as the men do,
Well, so
which they do in East Texas. So
I want to get back to East Texas because I got questions for you, May. But so that the thing about women behaving badly in literature and in films and TV. So there's this really unfair thing, right? Where like if there's a protagonist who's male and he maybe is kind of a jerk, he's like an anti-hero and a badass. But there's a real
yes.
fine line, I think, with women characters. So I wonder, did you find it difficult to kind of toe that line? Did that even enter, the writing process at all?
I love how you just said that. Like I need to write that down. That's such a brilliant way to describe it. As I was drafting, no, it never even really entered my mind. It was only when I got to the editorial stage that there was, we definitely need to make people relatable and stuff, which I got. So we did a lot of work on Sophie's character, actually, the main character, and in particular her backstory, so readers could just understand, why are you wrecking your perfect life or your seemingly perfect life? And I do understand that. But it really wasn't until the book was released, and then, lots of people have loved it, but there's been another group of people that really are super uncomfortable with the women
Hmm.
behaving badly in it. And it's, wow, I was not prepared for that. And it's very much probably an essay I should write about, why is it such a triggering thing? Like men can do this, but the minute women step out of their boxes,
Right.
wow.
Why? I guess
Yeah.
it's like, why is it cool to like Scarface and Tony Soprano, right? But
Yeah.
not Sophie and Margot. It's an interesting. Um, it was just something that kind of kept one of the layers, as I mentioned while I was reading the book. The other one, and you touched on it, but it's that like the Instagram perfect life. I think you do such a good job of taking, because we all just like you know what Instagram looks like. I mean, it's
Yeah.
everyone is perfect on Instagram, right?
Oh, yeah.
So first, I actually just kind of a process question with that. I find it really difficult to write um, social media into fiction, but I think you
Yeah.
do it in a really effective way. So I wonder if it was a conscious choice before starting, or as you were going, kind of progressed in the writing. But I think it's, especially the way she's hashtagging on Instagram and doing that. So it's not like, I mean, because you read a book from the '90s and it is very anachronistic, the flip phone, and all, but like this just feels natural and organic and kind of timeless.
Thank you so much. I tried to integrate it in a way where there wasn't so much of it that it overwhelmed the reader, because it's like, wait a minute, I'm trying to read to escape from my screen. Like I don't now want to have to read about all that. But it was is very integral to Sophie's character, because that is initially how she becomes interested and then later obsessed with Margot was, her voyeuristic way of scoping Margot on Instagram. And it is just Sophie's character, like she, loves to post about her gardening and all her healthy habits and stuff. But none of the crazy stuff she's doing. But yeah,
Wow.
we all have these perfectly curated lives on social media. So I think that I did kind of want to also get at the pressure that kind of I think makes people feel, and it can make maybe a mom in a small town feel incredibly alone. It's like I do look happy on Instagram, but I'm screaming in the background.
Hmm. That's it's really interesting. And
It's not autobiographical at all, and
well, but everything is kind of is tinged in truth. I mean, we all do it to some extent, and I think that's the other hard part. I think with characters who are as bad as your characters in this book, but like with Sophie, where she's kind of the eyes for the reader, you have to also straddle the her being a sympathetic, likable character who you can relate to, but also makes horrifically bad. Sophie's choices are not good choices, you know.
yeah.
So how is that in the writing?
Yeah, no, that was definitely tricky. I definitely I work with a like a developmental editor as well as the editor at my publishers, and we all of us went through that. Like, would she really be making this choice at this moment? And if she is going to do that very maybe foolish thing, why? And so they really had me dig deeper into maybe like her internal monologue in those moments,
Mm.
why she's deciding to do what she does. Sometimes she's had too much to drink, um, but other times she really just is in the grip of this intoxicating experience, and she's not willing to stuff herself back inside her boring box and turn away from it.
And it's interesting that there are so many environmental factors, including people that are contributing to her making poor choices.
Yeah.
Um, so you talked about East Texas, and so Hunting Wives is set in the fictional town of Mapleton, right? But it's based on where you grew up in Longview, right? And you've described
Yes.
Mapleton or Long. I don't remember which one you described as a sassy and insane place. Can you talk about that, and then we'll get a little bit more into setting because I find it really interesting that the way you set your books.
Thank you. Well, yeah, so Longview is this it's probably like a mid-sized town. It was like 70,000 people when I grew up there. It's 2 hours east of Dallas, 1 hour east of Shreveport. So while you have these like metropolitan areas, in driving distance, it's definitely like cut off in a lot of ways, and it is in the middle of this thick pine forest. So it's but the interesting thing about Longview, it's rural, but it's also very suburban. Like there's a mall, there's an Olive Garden, and when I grew up, really going back to like the 1920s, but there is this crazy amount of oil money. And so you have these gigantic mansions and neighborhoods and people that have way too much money. And there's this whole socialite scene there. It's like the television show Dallas,
Mm.
but on steroids. So, and it's even more so because it's like a smaller pond. And so the fish act even crazier because I'm mixing my metaphors, but
Oh,
they're all their pond is actually polluted with alcohol. No, I'm just kidding, but it's so it's like a lot of money and like not enough time, not enough like stuff to do so you
to
can get
feel
up to no good
good.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Too much time, money, and guns on hand,
Yes.
I guess, right? Um,
Yes, exactly.
so the other piece, your other set piece is woods, and Middle Mapletown is surrounded by dark woods, and obviously Big Woods is very much it takes place in the woods. So I wonder, like, what is the allure of the woods for you?
They're very majestic, and it's like this part of Texas that most people don't conjure up when they think of Texas. They think
For
of
sure.
like either the super metro areas like Dallas or Houston with skyscrapers surrounded by flat lands, or like, dusty West Texas ranches. But East Texas It really is. It's called the, like the Big Thicket and the Pine Curtain, and it's just very eerie and lush and almost like I love Tana French's novels and Ruth Ware's novels, and I'm not comparing myself to them, but I love like especially Ruth Ware's In a Dark Dark Wood, how she set that. And it's very noir up there. So I'm attracted to it because I may eventually set a book in Austin, but I mean everyone here is just so happy,
I
you know.
feel like you've cornered the market on East Texas noir. I mean that it's like, but yeah, no, I definitely see shades of Ruth Ware and Tana French. I mean, um, I wonder though how, and maybe this is so because it's set in Texas and there are some very Texasy things. Do you have an indication of how the book plays elsewhere? Because I can tell you as a northerner from New York, the amount of guns and alcohol. You know me, like I like my alcohol, but there was a lot of both.
That's so funny. Yeah, my editor felt the same, and she's from New York, and I actually, I would get notes like, do the women there really drink this much? And I was like, yeah, Daniela actually tamped it down some, and we'd have a laugh over it, which is scarily true. It's a big part of the culture there. It's so much of a party area, like, and they, not me, just kidding, but you start young there, like as young teens in the woods with kegs and stuff, probably similar to the rest of the country, but it really it doesn't stop. Like, yeah, I mean, I hope people don't drink and drive like they did in the 80s and 90s, but I mean, it used to be like, yeah, you have your roadie and you go out, and yeah,
But
they're crazy.
it really does give this like I don't it's I told you the before we got on that it moves so fast, but like you have this sense of being trapped. You're in a big area, but you're trapped by the woods, and everything to me, the best word to describe it, the action at least, is swirling. With the drinks and what's kind of happening with the characters. So I wonder if that was intentional. And I think you pull so many really entertaining threads. And I wonder, in plotting this, do you know the twist before you sit down, or does the twist come in the telling?
That's such a great question. For me, it comes in the telling. Like, definitely for the Hunting Wives, I mean, I had it cooking in my mind for probably 6 months before I actually put pen to paper, but not in any kind of real way, just kind of the setup.
Hmm.
But when I sat down to write, I always like, so I took a novel writing class from Amanda Air Ward, who's one of my favorite writers, and she's really big on structure. So she's always preaching the 3 act structure. So I try to have that in my mind, like a bird's eye view of maybe what a certain plot point would be. And I had a few of those. Like, I knew I wanted to write about a character whose life goes off the rails.
Hmm.
So I knew that she would have like a point of no return at a certain point. And I knew what that moment was. Um, Other than that, I didn't know too much. I actually just sat down and wrote like a woman with her house on fire
Hmm.
for 4 months. And certain things that happened later in the novel would come to me, and I would jot that down. So certain plot twist would, but like I didn't know who the killer was until about halfway through the writing. I
Oh,
had
that's
no idea.
wow.
Yeah.
How long did it take
Uh,
to write this one?
so like 4 months for the first half, and then and then my agent and the freelance editor and I worked on it for another 4 months, polishing that partial before we shopped it.
Hmm.
And then once it was sold, I wrote the second half in about another 3 months. So probably like 7 months all told, plus 4 months of heavy duty editing. And then the publisher, the whole editing process with the publisher was about a year.
Yeah, but that's 7 months. That's a short time frame for a big book with a lot of things going on. Was it what year did you write the book?
In 2018, like, right, I was when I came up to see you guys for Storyfest, I actually had written about 100 pages. And then you had me on that great panel with Riley Sager, and we had drinks, and I told him about it, and he was like, you go home and you write the bleep out of that, and
Oh,
you
that's so awesome.
it,
That
yeah.
blurb in the front right there, Riley Sager. No,
Thank you, Riley. We love him.
awesome.
Yeah, so it was fast for me, but I did have like I was literally trying to race against poverty, to be very frank. I really was tired of getting knocks on my door that were eviction notices.
Mm,
That's me doing a lot of real talk, but it's just true. It was my last roll of the dice. Like, am I going to do this,
wow.
or do I need to pack it in? And thank God it worked, and we'll see what the future holds. I have no idea, but
Well, I do. I have questions about the future, but I want to just because we're talking a little bit about process. Um, the so I've told you how much I love Big Woods, and I think you would agree. But Big Woods is more of a slow burn of a novel, and Hunting Wives, like I said, just flies. So I wonder, like, was the way you sat down and wrote differently? I mean, was there a different approach for this book?
I would say not so much a different approach, but maybe more of an awareness of the other piece I need to mention is that after Big Woods was launched, I decided to part ways with my agent, and I knew I needed to find another agent. So I really was trying to write something that I felt like had a big enough hook that would hopefully catch the attention, of someone else. So I think I wrote it a lot faster than Big Woods, and maybe that had something to do. I very much love the Stephen King school of thought, which is like if the concept is strong enough in your mind, then you just chase that and you don't worry too much like about it. And that was my approach with that. It really was like I need to get this done and see if it's going to do anything.
Man, you
Yeah.
really stacked the deck against. I mean, you really ramped up the pressure for this between finding the stress of finding an agent and paying bills. And my
Yeah.
goodness, it's crazy that you were able to write this book under that much pressure because it's May, it's so good. I'm so
Thank
happy with.
you.
I love this book.
Thank you,
So
Alex.
can we let talk a little bit about your process? I mean, what is it like? Because you're super busy in your day to day. So where do you find time to write, and what does that space look like?
Well, pre-COVID, it was a lot easier because my son would go to therapy all day, during the day. So I pretty much would, let's see, basically the morning is when I have a brain. So I try to sit down and I write in 30-minute chunks.
Oh,
So I'll write for 30 minutes and then I'll try to take like a 20-minute walk, which helps a lot. Sometimes it'll unlock ideas and I'll type them up in my notes on my iPhone, and then come home and try to sit down and write for another 30 minutes. When I'm under deadline or trying to get something done, I try to aim for like 4 pages a day. So I keep repeating that cycle. Of course, there's a lot of hopping on Twitter and Instagram during that time.
part of the writing process.
It is. And so sometimes it takes me longer than I want, but I generally don't stop until I've hit that page count. Sometimes I have to stop and then I'll try to finish it once my kiddo goes to sleep. So
That-
yeah, that's my process. There's nothing mystical about it. I just really try to make myself do it, and I really try to not worry about like sentences when I'm drafting. I do to a degree because I don't want to go back and do so much work. But then I come back to like James Patterson said, like if you get too stuck, like focus on story over sentence, and that always gets me going again.
Well, I think that's the thing. All the best writers, I think it's uh, you just you there is no mysticism involved. You just do the work, right? But I
Yeah.
wonder is does it live with you while you're writing it? I mean, it's you don't close the laptop in the morning and the book goes away, right? It kind of stays with you through the day.
Yeah, that's such a great question. It does. So even on days like I try to not write on the weekends because
Mm,
my son's with me, I mean he's with me all the time except for when he's, not when he's at school or therapy. So, but I try to not write on the weekends, but if I can even like look at a page, that I've written and keep it in my subconscious,
mm,
then it really helps because then I'm still thinking about it and I'm actually still writing in my mind and thinking about what the next scene might be and trying to hear a character's voice
mm.
so that I'm not ever too far away from it. Because, like today, I did not get my word count done at all, and I've been so frustrated. But at the 11th hour, I sat down and I was like, just open the Word document and look at it, and I feel so much better. And like my sins have been forgiven. So
How was COVID for your writing? Did it affect the process? Did it just what did
it
it?
was crazy. Yeah, I fortunately a couple of fortunatelys real quick. When we sold the Hunting Wives to the publisher, we were actually offered a 2-book deal. So as soon as I finished the Hunting Wives, I started on the next one, which I managed to get about 3/4 of that written before the shutdown, and I'm really grateful because my son lost his services, so he was home with us, and it was pretty smooth for about a month or two, but then after that, it was really challenging to find any time or bandwidth, and the news cycle was all consuming.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was very challenging, and then it was like, wow, I have a deadline coming up, and that's when just like pure discipline kicked in. But I was also living in California, and the wildfires were
Oh my,
raging, and
oh my
we
God.
were trapped in the house. So it was a lot of like writing when my son would fall asleep at night, and then just getting it done. I don't even know how. So now things that are getting back to normal, more normal. Um, he's like in a summer camp now. Anyway, not to make it all about my family, but
No, no.
the pendulum has swung a little bit more, and I'm able to have a more normal writing
Hmm.
schedule.
Did the pandemic affect the release date for Hunting Wives?
I don't know. I mean, so we sold the book in May of 2019,
Hmm.
and
So maybe
so
not.
2 years ago. So it might have come out sooner, but also maybe not, because it was sold on a partial, so I still had to finish
Mhm.
the second half, and then it had to go through editorial. So I don't actually think it did. I think my editor was always keen on having it be a summer book, and summer 2020 would have been way too soon. And now I'm glad, because Trump was in office, and it was just so distracting. So
The
and
world
and
was
it
on
is such a
fire.
summer book,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the real like, and I think you just got the best cover because it has like summer book cover too, but it is deeper than a summer read. So I was like, it's a thriller. It's a straight up thriller, and it's like I said, beautifully written and really taught. So but it is also a perfect summer read. So it plays to both. I have a couple of stupid questions, but
No.
I real no, they're dumb. Uh, what because we talked about the alcohol consumption in this novel. What's the best drink to pair with your summer reading of Hunting Wives?
I mean, I would probably just have to say like a margarita, because that's like the national drink of Texas, right? But also like a dirty martini, because that's Margot's favorite.
Yeah, okay. And actually, this one's kind of fun. If you could choose one character from any, fiction, from movies, film, TV, whatever, and even maybe a real person to join your Hunting Wives, who would it be?
Wow, that's such a great question. You mean like who would be a good hunting wife?
Who would either be a really good hunting wife or maybe a really bad hunting wife?
I mean, I do, just for some reason, Angelina Jolie springs to mind. Yeah.
All right, good. That totally works. Um, the We talked about, so you have a new thriller coming out next year. So that's book three. Is there a book
Yeah.
four?
I am just starting on that as we speak.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's very early stages.
Okay. So, and then that leads me to another. So I remember I've had the joy of interviewing you a couple of times, and I remember from the first interview you talked about a nonfiction book that you were really like plugging away on. This was what, 4 or 5 years ago,
Yeah.
but it's about Rasan, right?
Mhm.
Rasan Roland,
Mhm.
the jazz musician, and this is fascinating. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that book, where it is, and who he was.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for asking. So Rasan was a jazz musician, and he basically was just this phenomenal human with this indomitable will. And he was blinded in an accident when he was 2 years old,
Mm.
but he taught himself how to play three saxophones at once. And he was really big in playing music that would come to him through dreams. And if he died quite young, and I feel like if he had lived, he would be so much better known. Like he, John Coltrane loved him, Charles Mingus loved him, all the giants in the New York scene adored and worshipped this person, and he played with them. But he just really died before he got his due. So he never got the level of fame as they did. And early on, critics sort of dismissed him as a gimmick, but his music is phenomenal and it's gorgeous. And it's almost like an extension of Duke Ellington, what he was doing. And because he has like it's almost like this one man big band with,
Wow.
yeah, it's just gorgeous music. And when I was in college, I took a jazz appreciation course at UT here in Austin, and the professor put on a song by Rasan called "The Inflated Tear."
Mm.
And Alex, I just like my heart stopped. I felt like I knew this person. I didn't know anything about him, but afterwards, I literally hopped in my car and I raced down to Waterloo Records and I bought a box set of his. And I started to read about his life story and how phenomenal he was. Like he had a debilitating stroke, and doctors said, you're not going to play again, and you're probably not even going to write music again. Well, he taught himself to play with just, one hand because he was paralyzed on one side. And he was just unstoppable. And I became obsessed with him. And so I spent the next several years retracing his footsteps. And I'm really good friends with his widow, and she's let me stay in their home.
Wow.
And yeah, I even got to sleep in the bed he once slept in. And she's really and I tried to interview as many people because there's still a lot of people alive that had these incredible firsthand accounts of him, and I tried to record as many of those as possible. So the book is going to be his life story sort of told through my lens as someone who was so compelled to know him. And he died on my fourth birthday, so we have this weird connection. um so it's both his life story, but it's also this quest that he
Hmm.
sent me on.
Is there video of him playing?
Yes, and
Really?
it's on YouTube, and that's really like there had just been a VHS released of him when I discovered his music, but then seeing that is what really like made me sell all my belongings and hop on a plane. And you know, yeah, I'll send you some footage, but
Oh,
it's
I love that. Yeah. So is there a looming release date, or is it still kind of very much in process?
it's still in process. I'm really hoping to finish it by the end of this year, if at all possible, though, and then see if I can get a publisher interested.
That sounds
Yeah,
so amazing. That wow.
thank you.
Um, I am looking. I know we're running short on time, and I do have a couple questions from the audience. And if you do have questions, please put them in the Q&A box below us, and I'll get to those. And if you don't yet have your copy of The Hunting Wives, there's a link in the chat to book plate signed copies. I have mine right here with the book plate signed. So click that, and you can pick them up at the library, or we can ship them out to you if you are not local to Connecticut. Um, I want to, there's a question that I forgot to ask earlier, and it's another like, Hunting Wives is like, it is a character piece, and then it's this big action piece, and I'm really interested in the character piece, especially with like okay, so Aaron warned Sophie really early on that Margot Banks is not a nice person. You are an exceedingly nice person. So how difficult, or maybe was it not difficult, to write these horrifically not nice characters?
Thank you. Yes, I feel like I always need to have a disclaimer like I'm not like these women. I promise. I'm pretty decent. It was actually really fun to let them just run rampant and wild, and I love, like, the movie Heathers, and I love Mean Girls, and I just love Wicked Women, so it for me, it was like a release to get in their skin and, misbehave via their characters.
Um, did you so the other you were interviewed by Nancy Grace.
Mhm.
What was that like?
That was amazing. I mean, she was so, like, so supportive and so clearly really taken with the book, and I'm like, "Wow, thanks for having me on your nationally, like, broadcast podcast." Um, she's, I don't know, she just had so much enthusiasm. I felt like I was just hanging out at a bar chatting with someone.
Hmm. So I do have one audience question. You touched on it a little bit, but uh, going back to the lockdown, they ask, how did you stay sane during the lockdown? If you stayed sane, and what did you do to fill the time?
I did not build any jigsaw puzzles or
Mm.
bake sourdough bread.
Like a year ago, that was the thing to do, right? It's just what a weird freaking year.
What did I do to stay sane? Wow. We spent a lot of times in parks. So because we couldn't go, into any, well, we did not go, into the public as much as we could. Like my son has some sensory issues. He won't wear a mask.
Hmm.
So we really probably spent anywhere from 4 to 5 hours a day outside in nature.
Hmm.
So very, very lucky to be able to do that. That was our sanity.
Does that did that you think or will that have an effect on what's coming next from you? Do you think that that's going to creep into the work?
Yeah, it already has.
Really?
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit. I'm not writing a pandemic book at all, but yeah, I don't want to give anything away, but yes.
Okay, interesting. Would you ever set a book in 2020?
No.
Yeah.
No, I want to forget all about it.
I've done we've done almost 500 virtual programs during the course of the pandemic, and every author to the person has said they will not set a book in 2020.
Good. I don't want to read one and I don't want to write one.
Man, what I wonder who, because you and I both have very similar, I think, to be read piles. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering who you're reading now, or who you're excited about coming up.
Yeah, I'm currently devouring this one. It's from
Ooh.
Andy Bart's We Were Never Here, and it's, oh my god, I'm so engrossed with it. It's about these two best friends, and they go on a couple of trips, and one of the girls gets attacked, and I don't want to give too much away, but I'm going to read a quick synopsis. Let's see. A backpacking trip has deadly consequences in this chilling new novel from Andrea Bartz, best-selling author of The Lost Night in the Herd. So they this is not a spoiler because it'll be in the synopsis, but they kill a guy in self-defense after they're attacked, and they go on another trip and a repeat thing happens.
Hmm.
And so one of the friends starts to look at her other friend like, was that an accident? And I'm not far enough into the book to know. But anyway, everyone pre order this. It's out in a month and it's just excellent. I also love, Riley Sager's latest one, Survive the Night. And one of my very favorite reads of 2021 has been The Girls Are Also Nice Here
Mm.
by Lori Elizabeth Flynn, and it's a very Mean Girl esque book too. It's so deliciously dark and wicked and unflinching in the way it looks at female behavior that it's just astonishing.
Do you tend to read in genre in the thriller genre, or are you kind of all over the map?
I used to be all over the map, but with when I started, like when I realized I did want to write thrillers, I pretty much strictly read those now because I feel like I can't catch up on them. Like I'm going to miss them.
Yeah.
I don't have enough time to read outside of genre, even though I'd like to. Do you?
Yeah, I read a little, and part of it's because of my job. I read beyond, what because thrillers, horror, mysteries, kind of my jam. But yeah, I kind of read all over the map. But I always I think for me at least I come back to horror as like the comfort zone in my reading, which I know is weird, says a whole lot about me. But for you, did you was that when you were kind of before you were a novelist, were you reading with a purpose? I know it's a weird question, but
No.
like, did you read with purpose as like, okay, this is what I want to do, so I need to read this person and that person?
Absolutely, yeah. I think with my nonfiction book, it's been why it's taking me 25 years to it's really a hard book to try to figure out how to write. So I read a lot of nonfiction and also a lot of novels that maybe read like nonfiction just uh, for inspiration and to study. That's really, I don't have an MFA, so it's really been my classroom is, reading and trying to dissect what works, what I like, what doesn't work for me personally. Yeah, I've always been reading for purpose pretty much.
So when in your life does that moment come where you go, okay, this is what I want to do?
I mean, it really did come when I discovered Rasan's music. I knew that I wanted to tell his story and get it out there. But that was sort of, just pure passion with no sort of like, I'm going to make a living at this or a career. And and the path has been very curvy. That was so long ago. But like I got hired to write. I ghost wrote like a businessman's biography, and then I've just done really odd jobs, since then. Like,
A lot
I
of
mean, not so odd. Like, I had a 7-year gig with this financial planning firm, worked for some great people, and then I became a mom. So I think it was when I became a mom that I was like, if I can make this work, like if I can be a novelist, that's the best scenario for me and my family and spending the time I need with my son and trying to make it work. And then, like I said, I couldn't get hired anywhere. So I'd been out of work, I think, probably for like 4 years. And my husband was working, supporting us while I was at home with Johnny, my son. So, anyway, I think probably like when Big Woods came out, I really tried to set my sights on I want to make this my career.
Did the way that you went about writing change after Big Woods? I mean, did you change the way you approached attacking the book and how you think about what the next book is?
I think so. I mean, my process is always the same in that I sit down and I write a one-page synopsis of what I think it's going to be about. That way I have a bird's eye view if I start to get lost in the first 50 pages, like, no, this is what it's about. So don't lose sight of that. Like, but I think what changed was the speed at which I wrote because the need to finish and get something, the next thing was so acute that I had to put blinders on and just push on blind faith, yeah. And now I do try to, Big Woods is definitely like a first novel, and I do try to improve with each book. I mean, who knows if I am or not, but I do try to dig a little deeper each time, whether it be with characters or plot. But I don't know what I'm doing, so
Yeah, that's right. You improvise. You go.
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
you clearly know what you're doing, and I want to thank you so much, May, for being with us this evening. And I want to encourage everyone, if you haven't bought the book yet, please go grab the Hunting Wives. There's a link to it in the chat. May was kind enough to sign book plates for us, so you can get a book plate signed copy of Hunting Wives. If you could track down a copy of Big Woods, do that too. But go do yourself a favor, grab Hunting Wives if you haven't done it yet, and May, congratulations on this book, and hopefully in the near future we can have you back up to Connecticut for something at the library. That would be great.
I hope so, Alex. Thanks so much for having me. It's wonderful to get to chat and hang out. And thanks everyone for being here.
And to everyone, thank you so much for being here. Stay safe, be well, and come back to the library because we are open again and slowly getting back to in-person programs through the summer and into the fall. So check out westportlibrary.org. Click that link and buy a copy of The Hunting Wives. May you have a great night. Thank you again, and to everyone out there, have a good night and be well.